can see right here, this is 150 lumens, and this is 350, and this is 750, and you also have this nice little blinking effect here too. So don't go to the big box and buy your lights. You can go to your local bike shop, which is a great idea, because if you buy a bike locally, it's put together much better than it is at a big box. Plus, you're going to be back to for repairs and maintenance. So here's another one right here. It's a backlight, and that one has two different settings on it too. Plus, it also has a blinking setting. So you want to buy those. Also, about 6 years ago, I decided to buy some Kevlar tires. So this is a Kevlar tires, and thus I have not had a flat in 6 years. So if you're afraid about flats, and you know what, nobody has an easy time changing a flat. It's not something that you actually practice. So you get yourself a Kevlar tire. They're expensive, probably about 60 bucks a piece, but it's worry-free. Another thing that I did lately was I decided to use coconut oil on my chain. So I thought I could find some kind of a green oil for bicycle oil. And I looked and I looked and I looked, I never found anything. And then I started getting sort of hip to the qualities of coconut oil. And so about 6 days ago, finally, I wiped off the whole chain. I melted the coconut oil. I went out, took a brush, wiped it on the chain, and things are going well. So it's pretty amazing because coconut oil is solid at room temperature, which is nice because it's not going to drip off your chain, but it actually seems to have great qualities too. So see, I'm getting a couple messages, but that's okay. So one more thing is that you want to dress brightly. Here's a nice jacket that I got from REI, and the sleeves come off. And in addition, you want to have a pump that's got a display on it, because if you're the type of person that pumps up the tire and then you squeeze it and you say, that's okay, I can pretty much guarantee you, you're probably not much more than 2/3 of the actual air that you can put in the tire. And if you fill the tires up closer to the maximum amount, then it makes a big difference. This particular tire right here is can be inflated up to 125. So I run 95 on the front and about 105 on the back, and it seems to do me a lot of good. So another thing about bicycles is that they're non-fossil fuel transportation. Or are they? Well, there's actually electric bikes, and I've certainly been in situations where I should have had an electric bike. And in Europe, they're very popular. And in fact, in Europe, the number of people that are killed from bicycle accidents now outstrip the number of people that are killed from automobile accidents. So who do you think is causing those bicycle accidents? Well, I don't know. There's a rumor that it could be the seniors that are going too fast. On the other hand, I was in Ferndale about a year ago, and it was dusk, and I saw this kid coming up Bermuda Street on an e-bike. He's going about 35 miles an hour, no lights, no brake clothes. So anyway, I guess you've got to be careful. Also, I wanted to mention that if you don't have bicycle routes, and let me go ahead and share this right here. So we're going to share the screen, and sorry for the delay. Share, and let's get this up here. So I hope everybody's seeing these 3 different types of bicycle infrastructure that you can have on the street. On the top left right here is a bicycle lane. You see those along Van Dyke between 8 and 9.5. And those lanes are part of the Iron Bell Trail. So the trail can either say it starts in Belle Isle and winds up in Ironwood in the UP, or it goes the other way around. But anyway, the city of Warren has got that one portion there. And the problem with it is that it should be protected. So the general rule is if you wouldn't let your grandmother ride on the street, then it is not safe. And if it's not protected on Van Dyke, I wouldn't let my grandmother ride. So we're going to get some kind of protection up there, I'm sure. The one on the bottom left is called a shared lane. And a shared lane is marked by what they call sharrows. So a sharrow is a combination of shared and arrow. And you can see right here in the red part, it says it has 20 miles an hour or less. So I understand that the sharrow roads are really not that much safe, but I also think that it's a good thing to have some stuff on the pavement. The third option is just a bike route. And that means that you don't have anything on the paint. You just declare the streets to be a bike route and bike friendly. So there are some things that you need to do for that, like have parking only on one side. That helps them make sure that they're not major roads. One thing I want to point out too is I've already seen two people that were almost hurt, and it would have been bad because they were on the wrong side of the street. So on the top here, if you're going this way, if you want to go that, make sure you get on this side of the street. And if you're down here, if you want to go this way, make sure you get on this side of the street. And the reason is that if someone comes out, backing out from their house, or they're coming out between two buildings, they're going to look to the left and see if cars are coming. They're not going to look to the right to see if there's a bike on the sidewalk or if it's on the street. So basically, we had a plan for some bike routes and some bike lanes in Warren. And as you can see, they, well, at least I had, we've looked at it with some people here, but these are the half-mile roads right here. And then pretty much north and south, we have in between the major streets right here too. So it's interesting because this route is, it's easy to do this because in the city of Warren, a lot of the streets are aimed in the cardinal directions, so that helps. And unfortunately, well, fortunately, unfortunately, between Van Dyke and Mound, there are no half-mile roads. So you wind up on the mile road, but pretty much all the lanes would hit almost all the schools and almost all the parks. So we're working on that. I have a question for you. And we've got some more questions coming up, and some of them are for kids too. But what do you call scars that you get from falling off your bicycle? I think you can put your hand up down there. No takers, Jamie? No, I see Paul, I see Marilyn. Okay.
I did unmute someone with their hand up. Barry had his hand up.
Okay. What are scars called that you get from your bicycle?
I also have something in chat. Scott said a strawberry.
What was that again?
Scott said strawberry.
Whoa, I've never heard of that one. It makes me, you know, there's probably more than one term for this, but I know it as road rash. So I got my road rash early because when I first got my bike, a really good bike, I decided I'd go on a 60-mile ride because if I went on a 60-mile ride, I could go on any ride. Guess what? It didn't work out, and that's how I got my road rash. So let's keep going. Okay, we're gonna take a look at native vegetation here, native plants. And I have a little story about behind this plant. And the story is that I had a friend who was having a birthday, and I thought, oh, it'd be great if I just go get him a native plant. So I went to a nursery, and it was quite a big one. And I said, do you have a native plant? And the person said, yeah, we do. It's over this way. So we're walking past all these plants, and we go to the next room and talk about all these plants. And finally she gets to the room, she goes, here it is, our native plant. I'm like, well, where are the rest of them from? And she said, well, they put them on a truck in Florida and they bring them up. And so that was my introduction. after hearing about native plants for a number of years, that they actually didn't have them there. And you know what I found out? That most nurseries don't have native plants. They don't have native plant sections. And it was on the list this spring to try to bring some of those nurseries on board with some native plants, and so that we can all order them. So here's the next question. What is the name of this plant and what pollinator is on the plant? Any takers? Okay,
I
well,
don't see any hands raised or anything in the chat.
how about just what's the pollinator on the plant?
Oh, I do have one response.
Okay.
Caphresia says garlic chives and fly.
Well, you know what? The first part is not what it is, although a lot of plants look the same. It's actually a rattlesnake master. That's because when they get dry and in the fall, and the seeds inside can be rattled. So it's a rattlesnake master. And they're right about the fly. You can see the fly is a pollinator. So we find out that many people think of bees as pollinators, and maybe they think of butterflies as pollinators, but actually anything that will alight on one flower and then alight on the next flower and drop off some pollen can be a pollinator too. The real sad part is that we know that there are chemicals that are killing these insects, and yet we sort of refuse to do anything about it. And when a judge tries to do something about it, then we have an administration that takes it into appeal, and that can take a long time. So this gives you a little idea of how important our bugs are here. As far as native plants go, this is pretty much a picture of a lot of native Michigan plants, and they do soak up water. They keep water out of the sewer system. We're going to be talking about what happens to the water that gets in the sewer system. And it's sort of interesting to check the plants in your yard. And I have on the bottom corner over here 3 apps that I have where you take a picture of the plant and then it tells you what they think the plant is. Sometimes it's more than one. So sometimes you have to see a couple pictures. So I have picture this, flower checker, and iNaturalist. So it's sort of cool. But if you can see in all that picture, what do we see more of? The native plants, or on the left, turf grass. And so it's turf grass, turf grass, turf grass. And this is one of the things that I think every environmentalist that I know is trying to get people to do, and that is have more native plants. So because the turf grass, you waste water, any pollution runs off with the water into the sewer. People put herbicides, pesticide on it, nitrogen runs off and contaminates the lakes and the streams and the groundwater, blah, blah. So here's a couple of examples. Does anybody have a native plant garden that can tell us about it? Uh-oh. Okay, well, we're working on that, right? So this is the person then who has substituted ground cover for their lawn. And I have in the corner here, it's formal versus wild. So would you say this is more of a wild arrangement or more of a formal arrangement? And I would say back here along the driveway, they have all one kind of plant, and maybe the same over here. So it's sort of a combination of the two of them. Okay, let's take a look at this one. This one doesn't have as many plants. It's got some grass in here. And you can see this over here. Maybe this is a more of a formal arrangement over here. We have over there. So this is a beautiful example and a different kind of ground cover too. And here is an example of sort of a wild garden. Now think about a wild garden is if you're going to just throw in mixed seed, which you can do. You can go to the store and you get mixed wildflower seed. When you throw it in, you better know your flowers, because if you don't know the weeds from the flowers, you won't know what to pull. Another thing about this is that cities can do this too by having a more formal arrangement. So if you're a Warrenite and you're on Van Dyke at 15 or 16 mile when you're waiting for the light, look at the median during the summer and you'll see that maybe a 10 by 10 plot of one kind of plant and a 10 by 10 plot of another, so that the people who are weeding them just take out, what they can see right away, what doesn't belong. So here's a butterfly weed. You can get a butterfly garden. This is a beauty. It's not like those ones from Florida that are giant. Columbine, and great for attracting insects. So this is zigzag goldenrod, and this is bottle brush grass, which is a beauty for landscaping. And look up here. Is this a green roof up here? I actually never noticed it before. It could be. So in the next slide, which plant is the native plant and what is its name? Okay, any takers?
I don't see any raised hands. Nothing in the chat about this one.
Okay, well, listen, I got to tell you right off the bat that I came late to this game of native plants. And then I only know these answers because I made up the questions. So if you showed this to me, if you put 4 different plants in there and you showed it to me, I would have known. But I know people who do, and they're the ones who help me out a lot. So it's actually the top left one over here, and this is the wild strawberry plant. And so there's a difference between a non-native and an invasive. So this one over here on the bottom right is not only non-native, but I consider it invasive. And have you ever tried to pull out the hostas and have them not come back before? Well, it's going to take you a couple years, and it's going to take you some digging too. Here's another example of an invasive, and these are Phragmites. So if you drive around and there are ditches, you're going to see mostly Phragmites unless they're sprayed. They spray them on I-75 so that we can see more cattails. So if you see a lot of dead plants going along the side of the expressways, the chances are they've been sprayed so that the cattails can grow then too. As far as buying them, of course, you can't go to the local nursery because there's just not a priority with them, and there are certain sales that you can keep track of. I would suggest maybe look at this one toward the bottom section here, the Michigan Native Plant Producers Association, and then you can order them. This particular picture is from the Mathi Botanical Gardens, which is in Ann Arbor, and that day they had thousands and thousands of native plants. So maybe by September, we'll be able to go. We shall see. Another thing you can do, I wanted to stress for kids too, kids to have a garden. It can be a vegetable garden or a flower garden, a butterfly, a rain garden, just any kind of a garden to really get them to be sort of green, and that's going to stick with them their whole lives, and they're going to be able to have a successful garden, have a green thumb. So on the left right here, we have compost, and hopefully you're not throwing your compost into the landfill. Put it in the garbage, gets in the landfill, and it breaks down to methane, and you see those pipes coming out of the landfill, and the methane is not good. It's a much more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So you can either dig a hole and put your scraps in, or you can get a compost container like on the bottom left. And this one on the right was one from Royal Oak, Michigan that I picked up today. And it gives you an example of what happens when you got water sitting around and how you can displace it with a rain garden. And it gives you sort of an idea of that you have to dig a hole for a rain garden. And then of course there has to be special plants in there too that would be able to exist in water. So please leave your leaves under the trees in the fall. And I remember last year I went across to a guy who was raking them out, and I said, you know that those leaves are a place where habitat where small animals can get food and they can live and lay eggs, and there's toads and chimney. Okay, forget about it. And then toward the right here too is don't take down your old plants because the little bugs can overwinter in them. And I hope that you have bought an electric lawnmower. Electric engines are 80% efficient and gas engines are 30% efficient. This one is really a closed system. You don't have to add any oil. You don't have to let it run out in the winter and flush it out and all that other stuff. You can buy an extra battery, and I've used it and I think it's actually great. So here's what I want you to remember on here. Mow it high and let it lie. So when you cut that grass short, it can't get enough water and it turns brown and you have to keep watering it. So mow it as high as you can and maybe a little more often, and leave the leaves on there, what you've mowed, because it has nitrogen in it. It's actually a fertilizer for the rest of the grass. Mulch your leaves, please, instead of raking them or putting them in bags. That's been a problem right along, to find a place to put it. And leave the blower in the garage and take out a broom and a rake and get some exercise. So I know people, and I've heard, like, so the companies, they come with 2 guys and 2 blowers, and so for an hour, and it's like every leaf has to be blown. I even had a guy across the street, he didn't wait until the leaves came down. He turned it on vacuum and he sucked the brown ones off the trees. So it can get excessive here. Here's something that you can buy in any store, like Home Depot and Lowe's and wherever. And this is actually human waste that has been heat dried and turned into pellets since 1926. So it's still there. So people say, well, what am I going to do about my weeds? And I would suggest, if you don't need all the lawn, to go with some native plants. And then also you can actually pull the weeds out. Don't forget about that. Maybe you can tolerate a few. So anyway, I think it's important to learn about watersheds. And this is a great way to get the idea of a watershed. So how many watersheds are here? Of course, there's 2. So an area that these both go down. This is one watershed, and here's another one right here. So where I live here in Warren is part of in the top left, Clinton River watershed. So over on the right, there's the Anchor Bay watershed, and that's a different one. So all the water from all here goes into this lake. And it's not just Macomb County, is it? Because right here, Warren, on the right side of Warren is Hayes, and on the left side is DeQuinder. So everything over here is in Oakland County. And a lot of what's in here is called the 12-town area. And all that water then comes along here, and at DeQuinder, between 13 and 14 mile, it goes under DeQuinder, and then it winds up in the Red Run Drain. So in typical year, we put over 2 billion gallons worth of partially treated or untreated sewage into Lake St. Clair. So is there any problem with Lake St. Clair? There wouldn't be if we wouldn't put that in there. So we're making the problem. So what we really should have is we should have a separated sewer system, so that the water that you're using in the house comes down here, it goes into a separate pipe, and the water that comes off the street and maybe off the roof then comes into this pipe, and it goes straight to the lake. So even if you had 2 pipes, it's potentially you can have a problem. So if you look at the top right, it says SSO. And you notice that this one, the yellow pipe, is a sanitary sewer. So the SS stands for sanitary sewer, and the O stands for overflow. So it is possible, even if you have 2 pipes, that you have too much coming and that you overflow straight into the lake, and that does happen. So more often than what we have is we don't have a separated system. We have a combined system, so that all the bad stuff from the house is coming down here, is going into here. All the stuff off the streets going in here. And we have climate change, which means that there's more moisture in the air. So that means that the drops fall through more moisture. They get bigger. That means it rains harder. And so we're overcome then. And we can't treat at the sewage treatment plant everything. And that's where we get the over 2 billion gallons a year that goes into Lake St. Clair. So what can we do about this? So there are some things that you can do. For an old house, sometimes you have a pipe that comes out of the house that's disconnected. So what that means is that the eaves used to go into that pipe and it would go directly into the ground. and they may have disconnected that. You can take the eaves around your house, and because what happens is that the water from the footings gets into the sanitary pipe. So if you can keep the water out of the footings, then you have less water that goes into the system. So you can redirect the water around the eaves. If your cement abuts the house, you should put some caulking there. You should build up soil around the house to make sure that the water goes away and not down into the footings. Of course, native plants, here we come again. Plant some native plants. Have a rain garden in your front yard. Wouldn't it be nice to have a pilot project of maybe 2 blocks in your city? That would be pretty cool. Permeable pavers, which I was at the ocean 2 years ago. The whole parking lot was permeable pavers. So it actually seems interesting that we'll be heading back for a driveway of gravel, but guess what? That's the equivalent of permeable pavers. And then on the other side, what the city can do is have bioswales. And what a bioswale is just an area, usually in a parking lot, where the water goes through the plants before it goes down the sewer. So that's something more for the city. A curb cut, obviously you can't cut your curb, but if you have curb cuts every once in a while of a couple feet, then the water goes back into the soil instead of in the street. Then they can use permeable pavers. And then the next one is manhole covers with smaller holes. So I was with some city officials and I said, well, you know, so-and-so city is installing manhole covers with smaller holes so that the street then floods. And that's actually the retention pond, or I say detention pond. And the person laughed. So I was like, go ahead and laugh. You know, you want it all going to Lake St. Clair, and go ahead. But there are things like that that people can do. And the last one on this list right here is add gates in a pipe. So on 9 Mile, when it's heading for Lake St. Clair, just before it gets to Lake St. Clair, the pipe is actually a 12-foot pipe. And they realized that the pipe almost never had much more than a couple feet of water. So as in the way of detention, they decided to put gates in there. And now the pipe itself becomes a storage facility. So it's interesting not to say detention, because you got to remember, if you are in police, you are detained, you're let go. If you give your lawyer a retainer, it's gone. So the idea from these things is to just hold it for a little while. So that's why we call them detention, like in school, and not that. So what's going on? I would say it's sort of a losing battle. And as you can see, the water flows from the end of Lake Superior and up from Michigan, and it goes down Huron, goes to the St. Clair River, and this is showing the stress that we're putting on it. Pretty much, certainly, the idea is pollution all the way along. So as we're cutting trees, more development, without a land bank to save what trees we have left, then we come to the last couple months. And we notice on the top here, this is April 3rd, New York Times, stop using toilet paper. So my friend, I have known 2 people, I have a relative and I have a friend who have had a bidet for a long time. And actually I went over to my friend's house about maybe 1.5 years ago and tried it out, and hey, it works. So if we want to prepare to see if this ever happened again, if we want to quit putting toilet paper down, which actually is just more stuff for the city to try to clean, then if you try to go and buy them online right now, guess what? You have to buy an expensive one because the cheap ones are gone already. People are buying them. So while we're at it, how about the best composting toilets review, thrown and smell ratings? So this particular one that's on the bottom right then is self-contained, no water, nothing. And so what happens is the watery part goes separate than the other part, and that keeps the water from making the other part smell. So it was the top rated one. And if we could go to something like this, we would have such a beautiful Lake St. Clair, where the beaches would not be closed once. And on the left, are the water sensitive urinals. So the EPA actually gives these waterless urinals ratings. And what happens is that you don't flush them, but every 3 months, you put another little thing in the back, and it just runs very slowly down the inside. So if you have a water urinal or you have a waterless urinal, somebody's got to come in and clean them every day. So why not just have the waterless ones? So this is the direction I actually think we should be going. So I think we should start a fundraiser here and raise some money for somebody to try one of these out. So we'll look for a volunteer. Okay, so what's the whole idea about water, using less water, is that, I don't think I said this already, is that you have to take the water from the river, you have to purify it to the point where you can drink it, which takes a lot of energy. And then when it goes down the drain, you have to send it to the sewage treatment plant, and you have to take everything that's bad out of it. And of course, that's pretty bad if you have separate pipes. And then it goes back to the river. So anytime that you can use less water, you're using less energy. On the top left right here, we've got my little power shower. And so you get wet and you push it here and it goes down to a dribble. It doesn't get cold, and then you push it here. So that works pretty well in the summer. And the winter, it's a little hard to take. And of course, anytime that you can use less hot water, not only less water, but less hot water, so you can wash your clothes in cold water, and you need to use the liquid for that, of course, and not powder. And then you might have a drying rack. And so can you see my drying rack in the back right there? There's my drying rack I've had forever and ever and ever. And so I haven't really used my dryer for a long, long time. And this over here are my sister-in-law's clothes out on her line in North Carolina. Thank you, Cindy. You were very nice. Let me take that picture. Okay, you can wash your hands in cold water. It's already been proven that really doesn't make much difference with hot water, cold water. And I noticed that on all those information I see about washing hands, they say, I don't think I heard wash your hands in hot water. They just said wash your hands. I'm pretty sure I can check that. Also, the next one down the line says hot water from the shower or the sink. So I keep a bucket underneath my, right here in my kitchen, underneath the sink. And in the morning when I go to run the warm water, I just put the bucket in there, and then when it's filled up, I put it in the not the dishwasher, but the clothes washer. And the same thing for the shower then too. You can use a lot of shower. Okay, the next one is sort of strange, but hey, you know what? I found out the other day, some friends said, well, I do that too. Whoa, I thought I was the only person in the world. But you know, when I wash my car when it's raining, I just go outside with one bucket and it's done. It's a lot less work, and you use a lot less water. Next one, bottled water. No, 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 no. Don't you do that. Okay, so you can get a nice filter that goes under your sink, and you can get your favorite then reusable bottle too. This one's nice. And when you go through the airport, it just folds right up there, and then when you have to go through security, you can open it up, put water in there. Next one is fast food. So ice takes a lot of energy to make, and a lot of people fill up their glass with ice, and then they put a little pop in and they throw the whole thing out. So I use actually hardly any ice or no ice at all. So Scotch straight up, please. Next one is restaurants that don't automatically give you water. So we have one right next to me right here, National Coney Island. They ask you, you can have to ask if they get water, which is great. A lot of it gets thrown out. And then straws too. They actually still give you straws. So right when they give them to you, you have to tell them right away, I don't want to give it back to them. Otherwise, by law, they have to throw it out. And some restaurants put straws in your water. It's like, okay, when you have dinner, you always use a straw at your table. No, you don't. And the last one is brown paper. And I have some brown paper towel here. And you know what? You can't find it. The problem is that in order to get, this is natural paper right here. And in order to get brown paper white, because it all comes out brown, it's from a tree, you have to bleach it. So all the paper mills are along the lake. They're using bleach. They're contaminating the water. And I don't know where our brains are. How about brown toilet paper? I don't know about that. And on the bottom left, we have a rain barrel. And this one's a good one because it has little metal parts that aren't plastic. I remember looking at one at, well, I better not say. I went in, I took a look, it was plastic, was all messed up. Okay, we're going on to birds. Can anybody, I'd like to ask a question. Who is a birder? What's your favorite bird? Where do you watch birds? Anybody want to say something? Going once?
Oh, Jerry, I do have a response. John says chimney swifts.
Okay, chimney swipes, and you can put them on if you want to unmute them. That's good with me. Chimney swipe, that's really cool. You know, I actually, what is the one that's related to that? I can't think of it, but yes, and I like the ones that go into the embankments when you have sand, and there's some kind of swift too, I think. So I think what I wanted to talk about to begin with was that these are the migrating routes for birds. And of course, they go north in the spring, and then they come south in the fall. So the migrating birds are actually coming through right now. And what they can do is become disoriented by the number of lights. So we have cities with lighting ordinances, and I know that I have worked with a few people for the last few months to change one of the lighting ordinances that's not going to be very good. I also wanted to point out that this flyway right here goes by Whitefish Point. So it's probably one of the top birding spots in Michigan right here, Whitefish Point. So what are the threats to birds? And if you look over here, it's weather events, disease, poaching, loss of habitat, starvation. I guess we can either chat or whatever. So what is the top threat to birds? It's not on the list. Who wants to answer that one?
Jerry, I do have one response from Charlie and from Kathy. Both say domestic cats.
Exactly. Right. And you know what's interesting about that? Another one on there is, you're exactly right. Another one on there is wind turbine, is not on there is wind turbines. And it's a funny thing, when you talk about wind turbines, a lot of people say they kill birds. And then, so that means no wind turbines. Well, actually the number of birds that they kill is under like one of the least of all on the list. Now I know that in Europe, during the times that there's migrations or certain times of the day, they have the wind turbines programmed so that they can shut off at the right kind of time. Around here, we have programs like Safe Passage on the bottom left here, Safe Passage and Lights Out. And Chicago has a very strong Lights Out effort. And that means that any building that has more than 3 floors, that they turn out the lights above the 3rd floor. So has anybody have the game Wingspan? Okay, well, this is one that I need, because just like native plants, I sort of came to the game late a little bit about birds too, but I understand that it's a pretty good game. And while I'm at it, I got a little note there to show you my binoculars. And these are image stabilization, which means that once you get focused in, you push the button, and then if your hand jitters to the right, then the lens goes to the right. And if your hand jitters to the left, and of course it's very fast. So it helps you steady your hand there too. So when that stimulus money comes in, they're only $400. Okay, so we have some migrating birds here, and these are the Baltimore Orioles. And do we have any people out there who want to name 5 sports teams named after birds? Maybe we have some kids here. If we have any kids, name 5 sports teams that are named after birds.
I do just want to note you can click on raise hand if you want to speak rather than type.
Okay, well, I guess we're going to keep going right here, and we'll let you work on that for a while. So I've got my goldfinch here because this is the only thing that I have out is thistle, and I only have one feeder, and it's actually a squirrel-proof feeder. And for those of you who would like to feed birds, this is expensive, but I would recommend it. And it's Wild Birds Unlimited Advanced Pole System. So really, you don't get much for it, but I can tell you it's a great system. For 115 bucks or 130 bucks, you get these two little hooks here. You get this pole that goes down to the ground, and you get the seating for the pole, and that's it. But when you add the squirrel-proof baffle, you can put up any feeder that you want, because you know what happens when the squirrels are around. And then they have add-ons like this thing right here in the middle where you can take branches and you can add on the branches. And actually you want to have a lot of branches with little more twigs coming off. It's really great. This right here is a squirrel-proof feeder. If you don't want to buy the system, when the squirrel gets on this part, the ring goes down and it closes the hole. So that seems to be a pretty good way for me if you're going to go. So, well, there's a lot of birds that die from collisions. And every year at the Toronto Royal Ontario Museum, they have a display. So they have a lot of birds in the U of M ornithology department, but they're for research. So we can't borrow those. So somewhere, hopefully along the line, we'll get to the point of starting collecting them. And I'm thinking of when you walk in the back entrance of the Detroit Institute of Art and you're up on the different floors, you look over the balcony, you can look down at some birds and realize how much the lighting and how much the windows are hurting them. So this is our city hall here, our Warren City Hall, and the window glass doesn't look much different, but it turns out that it's actually bird friendly. And another way that you can make glass bird friendly is to put little narrow fine point white paint lines on it. So you can see that on YouTube, but really it's basically just a fine point and you put some lines down your window every 4 inches and you can take it off, because the birds, if the lines are horizontal, the birds will try to fly between them, but if they're vertical, then they won't try to fly between them. Okay, let's give you a guess here. If anybody wants to identify this, I'm going on to Audubon and I'm going on to bird scene, and I'm not going to show it to you. And you have to tell me what bird we're listening to. And if it's a kid, you tell me how it's spelled. Let's see if I got it going here. Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Okay, let's try that again. I think we're not going to be able to do this. Anybody know what that one is? You all recognize it, right?
Morning dove. It's a morning dove.
Okay, it's a mourning dove, right? You got it, yay! Okay, well, we're gonna go on to trying to protect birds here. And so there's actually two things we're gonna talk about, because this slides right here I got from an astronomy professor from University of Michigan. So when it goes Michigan dark skies, they mean University of Michigan. And if you type that in, you put promoting dark skies, you'll find her website and you can find all kinds of information. So first of all, basically what happened with lighting is when we went to LED lighting, the price went down by between 50 and say 80%. So let's say that you work for the city and you had $5,000 for lighting for the year. So what would you do? Would you tell them, well, you know what, I only need 2,000, or you just buy more lights? So I think that's actually sort of what's happened, is that all of a sudden there's this big explosion of lights, and really it goes just like gasoline. When gasoline is more expensive, people buy less. When lights are more expensive, then they're going to put up less lights. So it's very unfortunate, but we have a lot more light in the area. So once you have met this U of M prof and you got into this whole thing, then you're never going to look at darkness the same way again. So I hate to say it, but if you really look at it this way, it's going to be sort of troubling. Now, the first thing that they talk about is glare, and you can see in the top left how this is glare, but every once in a while you see a gas station that's sort of lit like the amount of lighting that it should be. So another thing about this is the temperature. So temperature, all the light is rated. The less temperature, the more yellow it is. So if you're going along the street and the cars are coming at you at night, the old cars have got the yellow headlights and the new cars have got the white lights. So if you look at something like this on the bottom, it's probably a new car and it's got the high temperature white light. Unfortunately, the glare sort of blinds you, and I was going to do something with that, but I'm going to go on now. The second one after glare, that's too much light, is light trespass, and this is light where it doesn't belong. So are they trying to light the sky? Are they trying to light the roof? Are they trying to show their light in somebody else's window? No, actually, they're just trying to light right here. So if you walk outside at night and you take a look around and you see how many lights that are not aimed at what they're intending to light. And I know when I walk outside, it's like almost virtually all the lighting. Maybe the street lighting is actually going down. So as a result, you just don't see the stars. So the sky glow is gone and the stars are gone. So in addition to being Earth Day today, it was also a no moon. So last night, really, if it were clear, and I'm not sure if it was or not, there would have been no moon to interfere with the stars. And it was the peak of the Lyrid meteor shower. So probably like 4 o'clock in the morning, if it had been clear, would have been a great time to do it, except when I walk out the door, I might see 40 stars if I'm lucky. So once again, the sky glow is from having light going in the wrong way. So just at night when you're driving along or at other times, take a look at the lighting and see if it's lighting what it intends to be lit. You can, well, this is not anywhere around here. So I looked it up, and at night you should be able to see with the best view in the world, 4,548 stars. So it looks to me like there's actually more here. But really what that takes is you have to have a large distance with no light. So I went to Martha's Vineyard about 9 months ago or so, 6 months ago, and I thought, okay, I'm going to see this. I said, oh, I'm going to see this. And then I get there and we go to the cottage and we got all these people around us with these blaring lights. I'm like, oh, no, this can't be Martha's Vineyard. So finally we got in the car. We went sort of like way out at night where there wasn't much. And you know, the stars were good, but they really weren't better than these two on the top right here. On the top, Headlands International Dark Sky Park, which is near Mackinac, and the new one, that's Lawless International Dark Sky Park. That's in Cass County. It's sort of like over here. It's like on your way to Chicago. So I have to cross my fingers about that. So now we're getting to what it's actually all about. This is usually where I start my presentation. It's the heavier stuff, and I decided not to bore you with it at the beginning, so I'm gonna bore you with it now. Okay, so I'll read this, and you tell me which two words are not missing that you would usually hear in here. It's all about using too much energy from non-renewable resources, which creates greenhouse gases that's causing our planet to warm. Which two words don't you see in there that actually explain what's going on? Any takers? Okay, it's climate change. And you know, climate change has connotations to it. So besides what it actually means, there's a way that people are sort of turned off by it. So it doesn't matter what you call it. But we really have to address this, and we have to address it for the next generations. And I went to a climate strike in March of 2019. And let me start this right here. I'm going to start it up a little bit.
Standing strong in our rightful place. Solid as a rock, rooted as a tree.
Okay, so, whoa. So actually what happened with these protests pretty much is that in 2018, the International Panel for Climate Change came out with some statistics. And it said here, the current goal should be that we keep the rise in temperature less than 1.5 degrees centigrade. We are currently about 1 centigrade up. And the bad news is that we're actually heading for 3 degrees centigrade the way we're going right now. But in order to keep it under 1.5, we have to lower our emissions by 45% by 2030. So that was in 2018. Unfortunately, in 2018, US energy consumption went up 2.4. So we pretty much can make that 45% now 50%. So we need to cut everything 50% in 10 years. So can you imagine are we heading for using half the gas that we use? No. Are we heading for using half the energy lighting? No. How about homes? Are they getting more? No. Are we okay? So that's the problem, is that we have here on the left, and of course it says on my shirt right here, it says 1.5 because I got this from when I was actually at one of these climate strike things. So 1.5, this is what happened. Actually, the coldest nights would be much warmer than the hottest days. And at 2 degrees centigrade, then it's the same thing, except it's just worse. And I think that the place that I really saw this described the best was a report from Audubon about bird species. So this is 398 bird species on the brink. And you can click through all 398 bird species. Now, the one that happens to be up right here is the bobolink. How many people can say they've heard a bobolink? Is there anybody out there that's heard one? Okay, well, you know what? Pardon?
I don't see anyone yet.
Okay, well, you know what? They're not that common. Al says he has. They're not that common, and they currently have this right here, this range, but you better listen to them pretty soon, because if we hit that 1.5, which is the goal that we want to stay under, then this range is going to be lost. If we wind up actually going up to 2 degrees, it's going to be lost more. And then here's the extinction part, pretty much 3 degrees. And again, that's where we're heading in 10 years, 3 degrees. So a lot of times I talk about how this could be a house, maybe this built, let's say this house was built in 1970. So 1970, or it's probably later than that, but 1995, 25 years later, or 2020, 25 years after that, pretty much the only thing that would change would be the car. So we have the only place that this guy is actually taking carbon dioxide out of the air are these 2 trees. And it would only use 5 gallons to make up for those 2 trees right here. So you can see that we're running a big deficit on how much carbon dioxide we're putting in the air. So for the last 800 years, it's been between 200 and 300, and now it's over 416. And as it goes up, let's take a look at the threat here. So this is no longer 800,000 years. This is in millions, 100 million, 200 million, 400 million. And so that 800,000 then just becomes this little section right here. And what they're trying to tell us is that when we got up to a certain point, we experienced an extinction. And so life seems to be good now. Everything's okay. The problem is, if you don't make some changes, then you lose control of this. And after you lose control of it, if you get up to 2000 right here, then the plants quit growing. Now, people can still live actually up here this way, I understand it. You could. But the problem is you're not going to live when it gets here, because you're not going to get past the parts where the plants grow. So how do you know it's 2,000 or 1,500? It's because there's a lot of people growing marijuana. So you just look up growing marijuana and they tell you like how much is optimum. And then after that, it kills the plant. So we had a lot of loops going on and positive feedback loops. And I hope you're sticking with me here. I know this is sort of complicated, but what happens is that as you have wildfires, and this is just less than 1 month in 2019, as you have wildfires, the trees burn and release their carbon dioxide, and then the tree is not there to take up the carbon dioxide. So that means it's warmer. That means that you get more wildfires, which means there's more carbon. That means, so you can see the loop right here. Here's another loop. We have liquid deposits of methane on the bottom of the oceans. And in the instance of the Arctic Ocean, which is warming up the fastest, those liquid methane is turning into gas and it's being released. And the same thing, the more the methane goes in the air, the more it warms up the ocean, the more the methane. Here's another one right here, water vapor. The more that the atmosphere warms up, the more that there is evaporation, which means that there's more water vapor, which is actually the greatest greenhouse gas, and it just goes on and on. So it's these type of things that we have to be worried about. Here's another one. This one is if the calcium carbonate, which is all the little critters that fell toward the ocean and turned into the calcium rock. I can't think of it exactly, but that could be a bad one too, and it's causing drought. So let's take a look at this drought right here. This is starting from 1950, and I'll tell you when we go by where we are now, which is now. So we can see that, in fact, the West now is an experience of drought, and it's called a mega drought. And it just came into the news a couple days ago. It's a mega drought. It's a natural phenomenon. But the problem is that climate change is exacerbating it, and it's much worse. So as that water evaporates, we still around here have too much water. And in fact, we're using about average maybe around, say, 325 liters a day. And some people, like 1.6 billion people, live on 1,000 liters a year. So we have to think about them too. Also, the oceans and the lakes are warming up. And when the water warms up, it contains less oxygen, holds less oxygen. So you have fewer fish and smaller fish. And then we have irreversible sea level rise. So the poles are warming up the fastest. And here's Antarctica. It's 1.5 times the size of the United States and on average over a mile high in ice. And you can see these little places right here. So this yellow line is actually the shoreline of Antarctica. So all this ice right here is sitting on land, but this right here are the ice shelves. So they're jutting out over the water. Here's another big one here. And these are the things that are breaking off now. And you can see them crack, and they're cracking off. Sometimes it's like natural, but the ice is sort of sliding toward the ocean faster than it used to be. Here is what happened when we had a, what's it called? It was polar vortex, the polar vortex. So it started off usually over Arctic is one piece here, and the Arctic warmed up so much that it broke up and it came down over the United States. And that's why we had -12, -15 or something like that. We have more erratic and severe weather. We have loss of plants and animals. We have an increase in diseases. And of course, that includes hay fever and allergies. But there are a lot on the list over here. And the ones that we've heard about now in the state of Michigan is a virus called the Eastern equine encephalitis. You can check out every day during the summer where it happens to be in Michigan. Of course, West now. Zika, human California, we have that here too. And now we know about viruses. So we know a lot more than we used to. Who remembers what I said about the efficiency of the electric lawnmower?
I don't have anyone yet.
Okay, Al's got his hand up. No, maybe not answer.
No?
No. Okay, well, I said that
Oh, I do have a few answers.
okay, go ahead.
Charlie says 80% versus 30%.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. There are other answers,
'cause
but okay, we'll
that's
go with that
the
one.
right
Okay.
So an electric motor, and it's good to hear there's people out there. Thank you. It's really sort of interesting to be talking to a screen, but I'm getting used to it. So yes, Charlie, an electric engine is 80% efficient, and a gas engine is 30% efficient. So that goes the same thing for electric cars. Really the fastest cars that they have, and I think the F1s are actually maybe moving toward electric vehicles, are really the electric vehicles. So there's a lot to discuss about this, and we are at a really bad time. I don't know about you guys, but you're sitting at home and you hear a car go, and it goes right off. So if you remember, and if I didn't say it, that each gallon of gas puts about 20 pounds of carbon dioxide in the air. And where's the carbon dioxide going? It's not going anywhere but into the atmosphere and into the oceans and the lakes and into the trees. And we have less trees all the time. So it's just sitting there. And so it has the effect of putting a piece of glass over the earth and making us warm up. So at a time when we should be using less gas, just like we talked about the light, the price of gas goes down and then people will use more of it. They're really heading in the opposite direction. So it's really disturbing that after this is sort of over and we can get back out on the street then at $1.49, I can't imagine anybody's going to have conservation in their heads. So some other advantages for these hybrid cars is that they're heavier because the batteries are heavier, so a heavier car does better in an accident. They don't have such a big engine, so they have a better crumple zone right here. The battery is very reliable, in fact, so it only loses a little bit over its lifetime, and I hear that myth all the time. Oh, you're gonna have to change your batteries. Well, I got 185,000 on mine, and I'm still getting 49 miles to a gallon. And when you have an all-electric car, you've got all these things that you don't need on the car, like you don't need spark plugs, oxygen sensors, catalytic converter, muffler, gas tank, all kinds of stuff, radiator, and on that you don't need. And that brings me to the point about why we don't sell more of them. Well, partly it could be that the dealers don't know about them, but it could be too they're not going to make that much money off of them because they're so reliable. Well, I don't know. I guess that's a conspiracy theory. Another thing about pollution and cars is if we can get people to quit idling. So, and the worst thing that I think of as I go to give these talks to kids, I pull up in front of the school and the school buses are idling, waiting for the kids to come out. Now, this has been known for a long time. You turn the buses off. You don't have the kids sit and breathe these diesel particles because they're so small that they go and bypass your whole system here to stop them. They go right into your lungs. They go in your blood. They go in your heart. They go into your brain. They're so small. So the whole diesel thing is why they're outlawing diesels completely in parts of Europe. So another one's remote starters. I had a woman who came out. She said, you know, I can't park my car so I can aim my remote starter at it. And would you want to switch with me? And I said, well, you know, cars aren't made to actually idle. And when you're letting them idle, you're making more pollution. I said, okay, if you only warm up your car every other day, I'll give you that spot. She said, good. So she's got it now. Idling clauses is another thing that can happen. You see city vehicles idling, and the city actually can not only have rules for their own vehicles, but if they have a contract, so a lot of the things that the city does is subcontracted out on that subcontract right into the subcontract that the vehicles are not to be idling. Topping off your tank, and I haven't been saying names, but I'm going to say Costco right now because I usually don't fill up at Costco, but when you fill up, it says at the end, don't top off your tank. And that's because you're letting the fumes out from the tank. And there's also a fume catcher that can be overdone. On the flip side, there's a whole bunch of people that are idling, waiting to get gas. So go figure. Then there's stop start technology. You stop your car, the engine stops, and that's great. I know somebody who bought a car, had stop start technology. I thought it was great. And they go, well, here's the button to turn it off. And so, well, I guess you can turn it off. And then when you come to a stoplight, your engine stays on even though you're sitting there. Well, anyway, let's keep going here. There's also an electric plug-in. So you can have a hybrid, or you can have an all-electric, or you can have a hybrid plug-in. This is, I assume, the bottom of a Tesla. And all the Tesla stuff is actually just little C-sized batteries. And it's just a matter of how many batteries that you put in them. And like if it's in your basement, it's the same thing. Here's the intelligent transportation system. And you can see, well, what happens is that this is actually at every intersection where there's a traffic light, and it helps to time the lights, and it's supposed to look if someone's turning. If no one's turning, there's no green arrow. And when it works right, it's great, except there's just a number of them that don't work right, and everybody waits while no one turns, and the gates are closed, and everybody waits. All that information in Macomb County is all fed into 117 South Growth Spec. And not only can they work on the lights here, but there's also this for the emergency services so that they can change the lights in order to let ambulances through. So I talk to people who work on self-driving cars for the car company, and they say, the real problem is having self-driving cars with people driving cars and trying to figure out what people are going to do next. So I guess at some time or another, I'm just going to say, that's it, guys. This is obviously pretty bad, and that maybe we will make that switch. I don't know. I guess we're going to have both on the street, and we may have more than we think of them. I'm not sure about around here. But we could have a vehicle that looks like this. So it comes to pick you up in the morning, you plug it in your phone, and then it takes you to work, and then you just can work on the way there. And we had an unfortunate defeat of the Regional Transportation Authority Initiative in 2016. It could be on the ballot in November again as a smaller initiative minus Macomb County. But the legislature is out till May 5th, and then we'll have to see if they're actually going to put it on the ballot. Okay, so according to the Sierra Club, we should have wind turbines. We should have solar panels. There's bicycles here. Who knows? There's probably geothermal energy. And when we all go to work in the city in the morning, then we can send the energy that we don't use to the city, and we all come home at night. And then we can send the energy back this way. So that's the way it's supposed to work. Okay, have you ever seen a wind turbine before? And where in Michigan is the wind the strongest? Anybody want to answer that?
I don't have anyone yet.
Okay, well, I'm sure that you've seen a wind turbine before.
I
Somebody?
do have an answer.
Okay.
From Al, it says LK, Michigan.
Okay. I don't recognize it, but maybe they are.
From Heidi, wind is strongest in the most ecologically sensitive places along the shore.
Aha.
Andrea has seen it a lot in the Thumb.
Yes.
We saw a wind turbine in Canada.
Ah, okay. I recognize that girl, actually. And yes, in Canada. So, yes, I, in fact, if you live around here and you're on Jefferson in St. Clair, well, it's actually Grosse Pointe Shores, and you're on Jefferson and you look across Lake St. Clair, you can count 100 wind turbines. So On a clear day, you can count them during the day. On a clear night, you can see 100 red lights blinking. So, I would say besides being along the shore, obviously anywhere, that's why they put them in farmland. Anywhere there are fewer obstacles to slow the wind down, it's the best place to put them. And in fact, the higher that you go is better off too. So that's why people want their wind turbines up higher. In general, I know I talked to people that were at conferences about wind turbines, and it seems like the smaller ones actually are not that reliable and they need repair. And so really it's the big ones that really are the most important ones. And obviously here we have one heck of a wind turbine. And so what happens is that the bigger that you go, the more efficient they are. And so if you take a look at a coal-fired power plant on the top left, say the Monroe Nuclear Power Plant, which is 1,098 megawatts. And while we're at it, no, I don't want to do that now. 1,098 megawatts, how many wind turbines would it take to equal one coal-fired power plant? Well, if you're putting up these 2.5 wind turbines, then it's going to have to put up 439. But if you're putting up the 50 megawatt versions, you only have to put up 22. So it turns out to be, why put up 5 small ones when you can put up 3 bigger ones? Why put up 3 bigger ones when you can put up 1 really big one? And that's what's going on around the world. So, those wind turbines that I saw across Lake St. Clair, I tried to find them, and it is very hard to find them. So that is a challenge for you. Try to find the wind turbines. And if you think this is a wind turbine right here, it's not. Okay, that's because that's the shadow. Here's the wind turbine. Okay, so about solar, I love this picture because it's IKEA in Kent Township, and it has 1 megawatt worth of solar panels on the ceiling, on the roof, and of course you don't see them. So I have a tendency to judge everything that I hear in terms of IKEA. So there's one IKEA, and here's 15 megawatts at Michigan State University. That's 15 IKEAs. So it gives me like a little comparison that I can make here too. But the projects are getting bigger and bigger, like the one on the bottom, 239. This one, I don't know if I'm going to explain this one to you. It's what happens in California, and that is the duck curve. And it's very complicated, and we're sort of running out of time here. So we're going to skip that one. But the problem is storing energy for the evening, and this is in Hawaii. And Tesla said, okay, listen, we will meet your challenge. We'll give you enough storage to hold enough for your city. And what's inside all these things right here? C-size batteries, and they're in little sections that go in there. So here's a house that's got a skylight, which is very environmentally friendly. Here's the device that preheats hot water. That's also very environmentally friendly. And we can say that on average, each, for the terms of counting, each solar panel is about 250 watts. So 4 of them make 1,000 watts. So here's 250, 500, 750, 1,000. So 1,000 watts is also 1 kilowatt. So here's 1 kilowatt, 2 kilowatts, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. So we could get 8,500 watts out of here if the sun were coming down directly on a sunny day. And of course, it's not directly down because during different parts of the year, the angle varies. Sometimes it's cloudy. So we have to figure probably about a quarter of that is what we're really going to get. So if you have that, you're going to have to hook it up to DTE. You're going to have to hook it up to the grid, and you might wind up with something like this in the basement. So this right here stores 13 kilowatts, which you should be able to make even on a cloudy day, say in the fall. And then, of course, you're using it during the day so you can keep recharging it. And Tesla is assuming that you're going to use about 24 kilowatts a day. So it's actually Tesla LG up here on the top left makes them too. So if you paid all this money for these solar panels, you want to make your money back. So you start thinking about being efficient. So you take a look at how that you use energy. If we look at the clothes washer, if you have a hot wash and a warm rinse, it's going to use 6 kilowatts. That's going to use your 6 out of that 24. But if you warm wash, cold rinse, you're only going to use 3. So you start looking at these kind of things in terms of getting your money back. Another one on the bottom here, your Tesla 3, which of course you all have in your garage, I know it, is getting 35 kilowatts per 100 miles. So you can't do miles per gallon because there's no gallons. So it's how they rate them is kilowatts per hour. So let's say a different electric car would only have 22, or let's say it would take 28 kilowatts of power to go 100 miles. And that's how they talk about electric cars. Geothermal energy, it's always the same temperature in the earth, and that you could use it to cool your house in the summer and warm your house in the winter. That's what it looks like right here. And you put these wires down, you put food grade polyethylene glycol through it so that if it leaks, nothing gets contaminated. And we're on to cosmetics. So I think that I was made aware of it for some different aspects, and certainly that this picture was really a wake-up call to me, but I found some people might be offended, so I actually put a picture of Jeff Zuckerberg, the headless Jeff Zuckerberg right there. So some people probably think he should be headless anyway. But so there's all these things that people put down on them. Maybe men, of course, not as much swim, but if you read from the top left, shampoo, eyeshadow, foundation, lipstick, perfume, body lotion, fake tan, ooh, nail polish, deodorant, blush, hairspray. So there are actually a lot of unregulated chemicals in the United States, like 88,000, and many of them are used in cosmetics. So Europe has banned 1,328 chemicals from cosmetics. They did that 2009. The United States, as of 2018, had banned 11. So you can see we are really on the downside here. So I have 3 apps that I can suggest to you, and I know that if you write the library, I can send on a lot of information, whatever you want. And they're called Good Guide. That's one. It's on my phone right here. There's another one that's called Think Dirty, Shop Clean, and another one that's Healthy Living. So looking at Good Guide, if you look at hair coloring and bleaching products, there are 513. 317 are rated 0 out of 10, and only 12 products out of 513 are rated 10 of 10. So if you put this stuff on you your whole life, then you have to understand that there's a better chance of a problem. What I don't have on here, and I think it's on the next page, well, I'll talk about that in a minute, but on the bottom it says, beware of these terms. Anything that says fragrance that is proprietary to the company, it can be anything, it can come under different names like parfum. Also, don't think that biodegradable, natural, organic, unprocessed mean anything. They don't. It does not mean anything according to the FDA. You can always go to Whole Foods. They have 400 different kinds of personal care products that don't have certain unacceptable ingredients. But again, you have to watch out for companies that say, well, we don't have this and we don't have that, we don't have this. Remember, there are a lot of bad stuff out there. So simply because they pick a few that they don't put in there and tell you we don't have them, that does not make it really that good. But go down to Whole Foods, and you can also look at this thing called Made Safe. And I have a sample right here of a Made Safe product that I got down at Whole Foods. And on Made Safe, you can learn a lot about the different chemicals. So they have each different one. They tell you what's wrong with them. This is one that the judge said it needs to stop, and the administration actually are taking them, are appealing the decision. Anything that says flavor, that doesn't mean anything. You don't know what it is. Fragrance, I already talked about. It could be anything. And then I used to use this right here for a sunscreen when I was biking. It was easy. I could just spray it on myself. And then I read, oh, oxybenzone is bad for you. It's very bad for the environment. And you should be using a liquid. So I went to the same store and I bought a liquid. And I used that for about 4 or 5 months. And then I looked at the ingredients. Oxybenzone. So I had to look again. And of course, it takes a long time. This one right here has only got 2 active ingredients. It's zinc oxide, titanium dioxide, and it does come in a very heavy white, but it's actually much better for you. So those are the kinds of things to look at it too. Another ones are PFAS and PFOs, and that's the stuff that is used for 3 things here in the middle of this, to repel water, to reduce friction, and as fire retardants. So this stuff is ubiquitous everywhere. And so until they start labeling it, you don't actually know what products have it and what products don't. But they're widely used on cookware. And yesterday on CNN, they had a review of pans, and there was only one that was actually looked like it didn't have PFAS in it, the forever chemicals. It's on sofas and carpets, like Scotchgard is one. Here's the DuPont Teflon. Right here, a picture of Teflon, of course, is a PFAS. It's on clothes and mattresses. It's on food packing. And right here, it's in wax dental floss. So let's take a look at this. This is TOF, which is total organic fluoride. So you're not testing for each one of the 3,000 PFAS. That would be impossible. So you just look for the total organic fluoride, and this gives you some indication. And you come down here to dental floss, 310 million. And look at, there's nothing in there. So walk upstairs as soon as we're done here, throw away your dental floss and go down to Whole Foods, please, and buy something that's better for you. This is the PFAS that came out of the Smith Air Force Base, and they were used for as fire retardants. And you can see it on the shoreline, that stuff you play with. Ooh, don't play with it. And of course, there's GMOs, genetically modified organisms, and how to avoid them. And I said too, instead of buying bottled water, get yourself a good water filter. And you can also dispose of your needles in Macomb County. I understand a lot of people who are diabetics or use needles for other reasons, dispose of them all the time. We're almost to the end, and we got 2 minutes. So I think that what's going on with trees around in Macomb is pretty terrible. Here's an example of a whole bunch of trees that were cut down. They cut down a lot of trees along I-696 too. This is what they could be doing if they had a land bank. And this is what actually seems to be happening. We hope that they do that. You should protect the trees by the drip line and plastics. And that's it, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. Jamie, why don't you just like unmute everybody? Now let's
Do so, sure.
Okay.
Everyone's unmuted.
Thank you. Yeah.
Very nice.
Way to go.
It's done.
Okay, there's
Yay.
Irma. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hi.
Thanks for the talk. Louise.